morning, everyone. Well, I'm very happy to be here. That's one of the largest innovation conferences in India. And what I would like to mention, to talk about in my opening remarks, kind of a little bit long remarks, like, I was given 40 minutes. But I would like to talk about deployment of this slide says TRIZ worldwide, but TRIZ has transformed a lot. That is why in many places TRIZ is perceived and called as systematic innovation, pragmatic innovation, you name it, different types of innovation. And because the conference is not necessarily TRIZ, though it is organized by TRIZ Asia organization, I would like to talk about this because what is happening right now with the systematic innovation and TRIZ in the world is really amazing. I would like to touch upon several aspects. First of all, in what directions the systematic innovation TRIZ is developing. What are the current trends of systematic innovation as engineering discipline, as science. Then a little bit about how deployment is going on in large global corporations, because that is beyond being impressive. Right now there is like an explosion of TRIZ among Fortune 500 and really big companies worldwide. Not only in Europe or Asia or the United States, though there are some differences in those regions. And then about some new directions of systematic innovation, but not from science perspective, but from market perspective, because there is a slightly different, well, not slightly, but really different call from the market right now, and TRIZ is reacting. That is why you can see some trends of TRIZ evolution in that direction too. And I repeat, not as a science, but following the market needs. Okay, and then very briefly about how TRIZ is supported in different regions and different countries. We will have a more detailed discussion according to the agenda, as far as I remember, about TRIZ in Asia, and that's when I will talk more specifically about India and China and Malaysia and Asian region. So I'm sure that most of you have heard about TRIZ, at least in general. You know what it is, that it is a Russian acronym for Theory for Inventive Problem Solving, an innovation approach that originated back in the former Soviet Union, but it dramatically has evolved by now. Starting from classical TRIZ developed by Henry L. Schuller, where he positioned TRIZ as a very efficient problem-solving tool that had embraced all the wisdom of inventing that he could find in world patent collection, analyzing it and extracting those, distilling those rules and recommendations how to come up with smart engineering solutions at the level of invention. And then later, when the understanding came that to solve problems is good, but sometimes it is not enough, because very often we start attacking extremely difficult problems that cannot be solved or that are very difficult to solve even with TRIZ. Because engineers, in their desire to solve problems, assume that they're married to them, they're married to problems. And that's, of course, wrong, because what we need to do, we need to achieve the goal of the project. How we will do that? There are multiple ways. And to achieve the same goal of the project, we can address very different problems. So why should we attack the most difficult problems and suffer, while doing that? Why not to analyze all options and select the problems that are much easier to solve and achieve the same goal of the project? And unfortunately, classical TRIZ that was developed from the analysis of patents doesn't give answers to that, because you know what patents are. Patents describe problems and solutions, yes. But there is no information in the patents why the inventor had decided to solve that problem and not another one to achieve the goal of the project. So that's why, as many of you know, a number of analytical tools were added to TRIZ that don't solve anything but are excellent for analyzing the technological process or device and selecting, the best problems to address. Those game-changing tools like trimming and cause-effect chain and others. This combination of classical TRIZ, the most powerful problem-solving techniques, and the analytical tools, that was marriage made in heaven. That made TRIZ at that time really, really powerful. By the time the Soviet Union collapsed and TRIZ kind of splashed out to Europe and Asia and beyond Russia into the market economy, it was clear that just to address the right problem and getting good solutions is not enough. Market economy needs practical solutions, with shorter time to market, something much more rational. That's why a bunch of practicality tools were added to TRIZ, as you know, like function-oriented search and the different applications using TRIZ for competitive patents or conventions, strengthening your own IP, and so on. So that's how TRIZ was evolving. And the latest edition, as many of you probably have heard, it is it's a group of tools that bridges the technology or engineering innovation with business. Because you talk to executives of big companies and trying to convince them that, look, there is an approach that will make your engineers very, very creative. And they listen to you and say, yeah, that's good. But you know what? We have very good engineers already. What we need to grow the company. We need to make more money, to have methodology for that. So it was necessary to link, the technology innovation with, with business objectives. And these tools that basically identify, if I summarize it, unspoken needs of the market. Because, as many of you know, every company says that they develop or improve their products and technologies listening to the voice of the customer. But a very important issue that often customers don't really know what to ask. They understand the need only when they see this feature or property embedded into a ready product. As you know, Apple never got any requests from the market to develop iPhones, never. And but when we get the first iPhone in our hands, we said, wow, I had been dreaming about it. But 5 minutes ago, you could not even imagine that such a thing could exist. So if we somehow can identify those unspoken needs of the market and embed those features into our future products, we're gold. And interestingly enough, some TRIZ tools, can be very instrumental in identifying not really these needs, but at least candidates for those needs. So if we have these candidates, we can go to customers and verify if they are ready to pay for that. So that's a pretty interesting twist to TRIZ methodology, but it's also innovation. So you see, TRIZ has really evolved from problem-solving techniques to kind of innovation platform. They can address a bunch of very diverse, very different projects. That's why, you know, the name is kind of changing. In very often people have some reservation calling it TRIZ because it's much beyond inventive problem solving. You know, it is much broader. That's why those names of systematic innovation and so on. So what is new there in this field? Because if in the beginning it was just Henry Schuller's efforts, and then his immediate circle, and then there were several TRIZ schools of thought in the former Soviet Union, then it's spread all over the world, so it is far from being an individual effort now. Many people contribute to developing TRIZ and practicing it, and that's how development happens. So if we look how TRIZ is evolving as a science, you know, to make the process of conceptual design kind of more complete. So there are some methodology gaps in the existing methodology. Once we identify so-called key problems that we need to address, there are a number of them, many, you know, how to prioritize them. Flow analysis, that's a very interesting type of analysis that allows to actually analyze how flows of substances, energy, and information travel through our system, because those flows, they travel from one component to another, like a train travels from one station to another. And components of our engineering system change those flows, slowing them down, distorting them, kind of spoiling them, speeding them up sometimes. So this type of analysis allows us to uncover, identify a lot of kind of issues that are not visible at the first sight. So it's a very good tool, but unfortunately it has not been developed to the very end. So that's a challenge. Trends of engineering system evolution, the cornerstone of the methodology, the fact that all products and technologies evolve according to some objective trends, and those trends can be learned. That have been described, they can be learned, and we can use them as kind of R&D roadmaps, because that's how technologies evolve statistically, and statistics is science. So the trends underwent huge transformation in comparison to all Schuller's time. They are much more complete. They are not completely, but still, you know, much more developed now. But still, there is a lot of things to do. S-curve analysis, that's an interesting part of trends that basically is not a problem kind of solving technique or anything. It is not about nuts and bolts. It's a strategic thing. You know, business planners, strategists, you know, that's who use it. Interestingly enough, S-curve analysis is the only tool of all diversity of TRIZ tools that was included into a number of courses in business schools. You know, pretty cool universities have included S-curve analysis. You know, the way TRIZ describes it into their curriculum. You know, Sloan School of Management, MIT, Dartmouth School of Business, University of Virginia, Stern School of Business, New York universities. Those are, you know, top-notch business schools within the first 25 in the world. And the fact that they included some part of TRIZ, you know, into their curriculum, it's very encouraging. So this area is kind of identifying unspoken needs of the market. Of course, that is the focal point of TRIZ development now, and because there is huge need. As I said, it is basically just hits exactly what the kind of business goals to achieving business goals can use. And because it's a new methodology, also there are gaps. you see this market demand and voice of the customer is expressed to scientists and engineers who develop products in such a form that it's difficult for them to understand what the market wants, because they're usually marketing people convey the need of the market in a very generic form. You know, the product must be more convenient, the product must be easier to use, the product must be more reliable. You know, some of those are understandable, but if the marketing department gives me a hint, an assignment, the product must be easy to use. And I'm a mechanical engineer. What does it mean for me? I know how to make products lighter, I know how to make them stronger, I know how to change their shape, but what does it mean to make it easier to use? Sometimes it's even fuzzier. Design the product that is cool. You know, when you design the shape, you know, of a smartphone, it should look sexy. What is that? As I said, I'm a mechanical engineer. I don't know what I should do to make product sexy. So my point is that the marketed needs that are given to scientists and engineers for embedding into products are expressed, you know, in a language that is not clear to them. TRIZ has very cool tools that can convert this marketing language, you know, how the marketeers kind of get it from marketing research to very engineering terms. Maybe some of you heard that story because I told it several times in India. There was a big program at TRIZ program at Unilever. You know, it's a very big consumer product company, and for a group that develops soap, you know, the marketing research actually gave new assignment. The market needs soap that gives their users feeling of cleanliness. And the scientists were absolutely puzzled with this assignment. What is that? What should they do, you know, to develop soap that gives the users feeling of cleanliness? You know, if it was explained like, okay, it should kill more bacteria, you know, and the criterion for that is bacteria count, that's clear. I would put more disinfectant into the soap and the goal will be achieved. But they are talking about feeling of cleanliness. You know, pay attention, you know, don't care, you know, how clean or dirty the hands really are, but the consumer should have feeling of cleanliness. So the whole group of scientists working on the project were totally puzzled. But when we apply those tools, you know, in TRIZ that can convert those strategic things, you know, they're called main parameters of value, or MPV, you know, strategic needs into specific parameters is available, it became very clear it's not a very difficult problem to design a soap, you know, that somehow reduces the temperature of skin during washing hands a couple of degrees. You put some ingredient into the soap that evaporates while washing hands, and you have that cooling sensation. So to achieve the goal of the project becomes really easy once the scientists understand what they need to do. Yeah. So that's things like that need to be developed more. You know, it is just an example. So there's a whole bunch of challenges, but they're very interesting, you know, research work. Talking about TRIZ application driven by market. Of course, you know, in TRIZ for Internet of Things and user experience, that kind of very close to this NPV identification and getting to the different levels of NPV. Patent strategies and so on. Now there is another very appealing and needed application of TRIZ. Entrepreneurship and small and medium enterprises that are basically the backbone of the economy of many countries. TRIZ, as you have seen on that chart prior to this slide, has many tools. It's good, to have those big, gigantic pyramid-like program for companies like GE or Subic or ABB or Fiat. But small and medium companies, mom and pop shop, they will not need that TRIZ certification and that sophistication of technology forecasting. It's not for them. They need something short and practical, something very pragmatic. They come, they learn during one day, and they can immediately use it there. So that's why to address that market, TRIZ needs to go through, tools need to go through some transformation. Somehow they should be dissected, converted into such a format that it is digestible for small and medium enterprises, and that's what is happening now. Okay, I need to go. This is MPV that I already just mentioned. This hidden needs, latent needs, that's basically features, attributes, parameters, whatever, call it whatever you want, that influence purchasing decision. That's what we need to know, because if we improve a product's features that they do not influence purchasing decision, we can create wonderful product and go bankrupt because they will not help our product to sell. We need just to focus only on those features that for which the market is really ready to pay. Okay? And it is only like a part of voice of the customer, because customers ask for very many things, but they are not ready to pay for all those things they ask. Yeah? So that's why MPV discovery, is so important. It's a really front end of innovation. That's from where, innovation project must start. Once when find those MPVs, now we have problems how to embed those into the products, and that's when kind of technical TRIZ kicks in. So basically, not listening to the customer. Listening to the customers is good, but not blindly. These are different levels of MPV that I mentioned, from strategic level that the marketing people use to these very pragmatic parametric level that scientists need to know. And this conversion, requires special tools. For example, the TRIZ has several of those, but just one example. At Hyundai Kia Global R&D Center in South Korea, they have big TRIZ programs every year, for 7 years in a row. We have those programs, and probably 30% of projects, the goal of the project, fuel economy. But it is, okay, what should I do? It is very, very composite parameters, because look at that, fuel economy, we can split it into several branches that influence, right? Aerodynamic drag and rolling resistance and the engine efficiency. Each of those can be split into a bunch of smaller ones, and each of those smaller ones can be split into another level. And the third level of these function MPVs, that's what engineers know exactly how to influence, because that's what they studied, that's what their degrees are in, right? But to talk about something very, very generic doesn't help. So in the long run, all these different engineering tools of TRIZ and these MPV discovery tools, the goal is to kind of develop a roadmap, and actually in some companies it's already happening. Like, we have a product and we need to come up with the next generation of it. So we go to the market and get voice of the customer and get a lot of feedback from there. That's a usual thing, and companies do that. So we have those features, requests that the customers give us. Okay, then we go to TRIZ and try to find those hidden, latent MPVs that customers have never verbalized. Those candidates that come from TRIZ tools. I have another group of those MPVs. So I have these two groups, something that came from customers and something that came from this TRIZ, kind of voice of the product. Voice of the product, if we The first one is voice of the customer. This is voice of the product based on TRIZ tools. So we analyze those lists and come up with the kind of, summary, of the final list of those NPVs. But that's what we think. We need to go to the customer and ask and check, are they really ready to pay for these features? And once the customer confirmed, yes, we are paying, then we go to TRIZ, problem solving, technology improvement tools, and in the long run, we get the product that actually sells well because it's totally based on both known NPVs that the customer, verbalized, and those hidden ones, latent ones that we have discovered and got confirmed by the customer through TRIZ. So it's kind of what I told you. Everything is turning into some kind of innovation platform or innovation process that is done in a very, very systematic, almost algorithmic way. Every phase of which is supported with number of tools. TRIZ is trying to kind of go and try its ability, to improve things that it have never done before. For example, TRIZ for supply chain, or there's another name for that, innovative logistics. There were very weak attempts in the past, to use some parts of TRIZ there, but it was not really impressive. It didn't yield anything, that would deserve kind of mentioning. With the concept of NPVs, things become much more, they are moving ahead. Because, if we look at the supply chain, every stakeholder in the chain has their own NPVs. If I design a product that is very good for the end user, but it's a nightmare for people who transport and store it, if it is a nightmare for people who assemble it, this product will never fly. Some stakeholder who suffers in the supply chain will be a stumbling block. So there is an interesting approach, like how to design a product that gets implemented by itself automatically, noiselessly, without any resistance. Because resistance may happen because some stakeholders suffer, because NPVs of different stakeholders in the chain contradict. So if I look at every stakeholder and identify NPVs for every stakeholder in the chain, I will see that some of those contradict. But TRIZ is in the business of resolving contradictions. By resolving contradictions, I can basically get prepared so my future product will be accepted noiselessly. Also, looking at NPVs that repeat each other with different stakeholders, that's additional confirmation that I need to focus on improving on those features, because every stakeholder in the supply chain needs that. Look at that, the laptops. So when the end user, when I sit on the couch with my laptop on the lap, it doesn't need to be too hot, to burn my lamps. Also, the same dream have OEMs, because the market demand is to make laptops smaller, so a lot of components are very close to each other. That is why the heat is not dissipated well. So to decrease the temperature is also an NPV of OEM. So we can see the same kind of NPV repeats itself with different stakeholders. That should be the priority. Also, as I said, we can see some contradiction of NPVs even within the same stakeholder or different stakeholders. Those also need to be resolved. And other things, flow analysis can be applied here. So that's an interesting new application of TRIZ for innovation logistics. Now, what is happening in the world? Because TRIZ has very diverse applications and very different types of projects. product improvement processes, developing new ones, failure anticipation, IP, technology forecasting, green TRIZ, and so on. So a lot of different types of projects. TRIZ, is appealing for a number of large corporations. This is just a partial list of large companies that have either internalized TRIZ, or at least there are some pockets, that have TRIZ experts there. And again, it is not the exhaustive list, right? For example, with ABB, TRIZ is at the verge of explosion. ABB in Italy, in Diamond and in Vuitton and not from Milan. There are a number of people trained, they are level 2 experts, very good results. ABB China, both in Beijing and Xiamen, fantastic results. A number of projects with 30% of cost reduction. So I don't know if it is still there. There was a website announcement, ABB China. They were looking full-time employment of TRIZ specialists, certified TRIZ specialists. That was hanging on their website in China, ABB China and ABB Poland, right? Philips, PVN mentioned, big things are happening there. Philips Consulting Services and Ikovenko, they run those TRIZ trainings on a regular basis with wonderful results. There's a huge population of level 2 people. We plan, level 3 there. It didn't happen this year, probably next year. Philips Austria in, not far from Villa. They are hosting level 3 public workshop in 2017. They already announced that. Klagenfurt. SABIC, here, just yesterday I gave level 2 people level 2 certificates to 20 experts. They are handling several very important projects. There will be at least 15 patent disclosures, that come out from there. So you can see really impressive things happening. Just to summarize, because now they will drive me out of here already, Ian shows signs. A couple of very interesting pieces of information. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to draw conclusions because we don't have enough statistics. But it is something that is really interesting. How popular TRIZ was and is in South Korea. Probably if you had asked me a couple of years ago, I would have told you South Korea is TRIZ country number 1. Because all major corporations there, Samsung, LG, POSCO, Hyundai Motors, all of them have internalized TRIZ. There are full-time TRIZ teams. Samsung Electronics has 19 people, full-time TRIZ experts inside. So how did it work for Samsung, if we're going to look at some criteria? This is patent dynamics of Samsung only in the United States. Worldwide it would be, it would require deeper research. But this patent office of Poland did a very interesting research because the president of the patent office there is a huge fan of TRIZ, and they did this research. So this is patenting dynamics of Samsung. They started it in 1999, and look what is happening. So that is pretty interesting. However, shareholders, they do not care about number of patents. They care how much the company costs. They care about their money. So what about the brand value of Samsung Electronics? Fortune magazine does that research. This is how the brand value of Samsung changed. If you put these two things next to each other, you can see some similarity with a certain delay. But Samsung is a very special company. There are not that many of them in the world. Let us look at other companies that have been deploying TRIZ aggressively. For example, Hyundai Motors. Hyundai Kia Global R&D Center started TRIZ, deployment of TRIZ much later, in like 2007 actually. The approach was different from Samsung. Samsung, they hired Russian experts and observed in the beginning how Russians work, trying to learn from observation. At Hyundai, they said, no observation. We need to learn, and the job should be done by our engineers, not by Russians, not by hired TRIZ experts. We must do that. That's why the learning curve was much faster, much steeper. And the results were really amazing. Global R&D, this Namyan Center, they have budget for 1,000 patents a year. 1,000 patents. That's why they patent really important things, either strategically or those who go into production. TRIZ program, that we have every year, generates about 120 patents. So basically those 30 people, that in the long run graduate from level whole global R&D center with thousands of scientists. So, good. What about brand value? This is from Fortune magazine. This is brand value of Hyundai Motors. Again, put those things next to each other. Again, some correlation. And what is amazing, that the same thing you can find at Procter & Gamble, at Unilever, not the whole Unilever, but those businesses that are deploying the TRIZ skincare and ice creams and so on. So that is interesting. Again, I don't want to draw conclusions because just 5 or 6 facts, it's not enough for statistics. But it's something to look into, because if the statistics confirms, that's already serious. It's not just in developing creativity or, increasing number of patents. This is real money. That's what shareholders get. So that is impressive. Yeah, this is SMEs. I already mentioned that. Why small and medium companies require the TRIZ? You probably know in 2015 there was this World Economic Forum in Switzerland, and they identified, just kind of named, the features, the things that are needed for entrepreneurs in 2020 for commercial success. That's what future entrepreneurs must have to be successful in 2020. Read some of these. Complex problem solving. Person must understand root cause and address the root instead of a symptom. TRIZ has a number of tools to enable people to do that. Critical thinking. Person questions all incoming information. That's what analytical tools give us. We get to the very root, to the very key problems. Creativity, that is classical TRIZ tools. And cognitive load management. We have deluge of information. We need to be able to extract what we need. So those things like function-oriented search and a number of others that TRIZ offers support that. So practically, each of these requirements for entrepreneurs of 2020 can be efficiently supported by TRIZ tools. That's why, what is happening right now, as I said, TRIZ had been dissected into a number of very short, 1-day, 2-day workshops that would be learned quickly, this knowledge, and used in a very practical way. So a number of institutions participated in that, as I mentioned, MIT and Bocconi University in Milan. It's a very good school. All right. And, those series of workshops, like how to find the technology that you need. And TRIZ has tools, function-oriented search and others. How to design one successful product out of 2 old ones, average ones. It's like, how to design a new dress out of old dresses, 2 old dresses. Very practical thing. We will have this actually workshop in the end of the conference. How to find new markets for a product. What company will refuse to have that? TRIZ has inverse function-oriented search that allows to analyze the technology of product that you have, dissect it from functional perspective, and identify, what markets might need that function. Yeah? So there are tools for that, and so on. Yeah, we'll just get those. And because of this efficiency, And we will talk about it during the last day of the conference. What is happening in Asia, in Korea, how it is supported by the government, what programs there, so maybe we can learn and get some experience out of there. In China now it's #1, TRIZ-wise. If you look at TRIZ dynamics, China is the country #1 for TRIZ deployment. We will talk about that. It is supported by China Patent Office, China Association of Quality, that's semi-governmental association that has every single more or less important enterprise of China as its member. And it is aggressively pushing TRIZ into their members. So that's a huge driving force there. Even in South America, that had been kind of sleeping as far as innovation was concerned. Even there you can find some moves where, for example, in Colombia, for example, where TRIZ activities grow and actually increase the number of patents for the country 15%, for the whole country. This is very briefly in my introductory notes. So I hope that our conference will be interesting, in sharing opinions, experiences, networking. The organizers did a great job, so I'm sure that it'll be very useful and we will have a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sergei.